welcome back to Business 150, Introduction to Management. And in this video, as we continue on with our discussion of planning as a managerial function, we are looking at the topic of goals. What is the role of goal setting and goal accomplishment in the larger expanse of planning and strategy? Those are the kinds of things we'll consider in this particular video. We hope that after you finish this little video micro lecture, you'll be able to define the nature of goals and how they impact planning from a managerial perspective. Well, let's start out. Let's consider what is a goal. A goal is, well, the final result that a firm wishes to achieve and contains several components. The attribute being sought, the target to be achieved, an index to measure progress, not only final progress, but intermediate progress along the way, and a stated time frame. You can see there that organizations set goals for a whole variety of different things, including market share or market standing, level of innovation, increased productivity, level of physical or financial resources, profitability, manager performance development, worker performance, public responsibility, all sorts of goals that as managers we will set to put the organization upon a path to accomplish or improve or attain some target or attribute. Now, let's be very, very frank. When setting goals, if you do not have a specific attribute, a specified target, a clear and objective way to measure your progress, and a stated time frame, you're really just sort of wishing. You have maybe the best of intentions and a wish, but for instance, an unclearly stated goal or an ambiguous goal, like we want our organization to be the best. Well, in what way are you going to measure the best? Is it best in terms of objective market share? Is it most efficient net productivity? Is it, well, you tell me, right? Unless you have very measurable, stated, objective ways to measure your progress and know when you have attained your target, you'll never really be able to make much progress with poorly formed goals. Let's keep going. You see here the textbook illustrates that there are 3 levels of goals we're talking about, which all rest upon the stated company mission. Now, the company mission we've already chatted about in a previous micro lecture, so we won't belabor the point here. Nevertheless, the company mission is that final North Star that points the entire organization where you are trying to go, what you are trying to accomplish, what your purpose and reason for work is. And upon that foundation of the company mission, you can see the illustration, figure 6.2 from your textbook, how strategic goals build upon the company mission, and then tactical goals build upon those strategic goals, and finally, day-to-day operational goals will build upon your tactical goals, all of it in service to accomplishing your strategic goals and accomplishing the company mission. So if we go then to pay our attention to the left-hand bullet points, you can see here strategic goals are typically those very large sweeping goals that are set by the firm's highest level managers. Things like, what do we want the company's overall growth to look like? What about penetration into new markets or the introduction of new goods and services? Very large sweeping umbrella strategic goals that may take several years to accomplish. Now, once we have set strategic goals, then each division or department may set tactical goals, which you can see there are intermediate goals designed to stimulate the actions necessary to achieve the strategic goals. So, for instance, if there is a larger strategic goal of introducing particular new goods or services into the marketplace, well, you can guess what the tactical goals will look like for each of those product lines, right? Defining really what is the product going to look like, what is it going to accomplish, establishing price points and marketing initiatives, all those kinds of things, right? And then finally, to accomplish those tactical goals, operational goals are set, which are far more specific and address activities perhaps on a monthly, weekly, or even a daily basis activities that must be performed before tactical goals can be fulfilled. And you can see the last bullet point, achieving the operational goals, ideally, will lead to the fulfillment of the tactical goals, which in turn will lead to the fulfillment of the strategic goals. And of course, all of those things will serve to advance the company's cause towards accomplishing the stated mission. Now, you may think that, well, okay, I understand this, but is all of this methodical building blocks, is it really necessary to have these different levels? Can't you just state the goal and get about doing business? And well, that may be a way of doing things, particularly in very small organizations. The difficulty that you run into is once you reach a particular size in terms of number of people, number of employees, number of divisions, number of departments, where it is really, really difficult, if not impossible, to coordinate cooperation and joint efforts to move in the same direction without using goals to help set everyone's initiative, agenda, focus, emphasis, and direction. You really do need to establish these levels of goals to make sure everyone is moving in the same direction and cooperating with one another. The challenge of goals, as you can see on this slide, setting goals can be difficult because, well, one, every organization has several different groups of stakeholders. And those stakeholders will have their own set of goals and what they want to see the company accomplish that would benefit them. And if these stakeholders are both internal and external, they may have wildly different ideas what will benefit them, and some of those goals may conflict with each other. And so the wise manager has to make difficult decisions. Which goals are they going to seek to champion in this particular season, even if it means a potential temporary setback for some other group of stakeholders? What else is challenging when we talk about goals? You can see the second bullet point, the environment may change in an unforeseen manner and make the plans impossible to carry out. And of course, we have an example of that right now. Whatever strategic, tactical, and operational goals any particular organization may have put in place prior to 2020, well, 2020 has certainly dealt some unforeseen changes that have changed everything in terms of what organizations want to, and quite frankly, are able to accomplish. Organizational rewards may reinforce a short-term orientation. What does that mean? Well, particularly if you set organizational rewards in monetary terms, that may completely change and color how actual individual managers approach their regular operational life. In other words, it is a well-known fact that when you set particular profit targets for managers, the focus gets very short-term, and managers will focus inordinately upon achieving the near-term goal and do all sorts of things which may prove detrimental in the long term to an organization simply to achieve the short-term goal. You've got to be careful what kinds of reward system you set up, because it may reinforce goal accomplishment in the short term to the detriment of everything else. And therefore, one of the last things we'll say about goals, good planning requires courage and risk-taking. Setting ambitious goals means taking business risk. But of course, the wise, experienced manager understands that taking risk is a part of real business. No profit is ever made. No return on invested capital is ever earned without taking a degree of risk. The question, of course, is always, what is an acceptable level of risk to take in order to set ambitious goals? A big part of this, of course, as you can see here, just the illustration, trying to roll this big red cog to bridge the gap between, well, where are we at and where do we want to be? That's exactly what this slide is talking about, evaluating the gap between current position and what you've set as a goal. And this calls for very honest, objective, and thorough analysis. How much difference is there between where we're at right now, our current situation, and where our goal would like to take us to be? In fact, the gap between actual and anticipated states, are there changes needed to close this gap? Certainly there probably will be. And are those changes, the required changes, major or minor? Because no major change happens without time, effort, and resources. And therefore, is it necessary to develop a plan that will require a dramatic amount of time, effort, and resources? Or is it simply a matter of trying a little harder to do the things that we are, well, already doing, right? And the answer to that last question is going to have an enormous significance, enormous amount of influence upon how you approach each of these goals. Does this make sense? I certainly hope it does. These are the kinds of level of analysis that wise management really needs to undertake before accepting a particular set of goals as achievable and able to be accomplished. One of the really difficult part about making future plans, of course, and setting future goals is, of course, the adjective future, right? Because any sort of planning involves making some assumptions about the future, both for the organization and for the external environment in which it lives and thrives. And so if a company can reliably assume that the organization and the external environment will remain somewhat relatively stable for the foreseeable future, obviously that makes planning much more reliable. But as 2020 has served up for us, right? If rather either the status of the organization or the status of the external environment changes in an unpredictable fashion, well, that can be it can mean an entirely different set of challenges for planning, which becomes far more difficult, far more complex. And with every layer of difficulty and complexity that's added, it makes planning that much more uncertain. Well, when we talk about the topic of goals, we should at least think a little bit about personal goals, even though this isn't necessarily the topic, the immediate topic of this particular chapter. But consider this. Latest numbers tell us that over 83% of Americans have no established goals. 83% of Americans, you stop them on the street, you ask them, what goals do you have? They may think for a second and maybe tell you something, but they don't actually have goals established. Now, consider the second bullet point. You are 50% more likely to accomplish your goals if you simply write them down. You don't even have to share them with anyone. Just simply write them down on a piece of paper. You are 50% more likely to accomplish the goal if you have that written statement and reminder in front of you. And yet, only 0.5% of people write their goals down. What does that mean? That's 1 person out of 200 writes down their goals. Let me put that in another perspective. This semester, I'm teaching about 300 students. What does that mean? It means I would be lucky if 2 or 3 of my students actually write their goals down. That would be incredibly unusual. And yet that second bullet point still tells us 50% more likely to accomplish your goals if you write them down. In fact, you want to go higher than 50%? The fourth bullet point tells us you are far more likely to accomplish your goals if you write them down and then tell someone else that you know about your goal. You don't even have to ask them to check in with you or hold you accountable. You just tell them that you've written this goal down, you've established this goal. You're far more likely than 50% more likely to accomplish your goals. And so my challenge to you would be, will you start writing your goals down? Will you take it upon yourself, just simply getting out a piece of paper and writing the things you really want to accomplish down on a piece of paper? Because that will incredibly, exponentially increase the likelihood that you will be able to accomplish that goal in your life. And if you want to go even further, tell your best friend, tell your parents, tell your children, tell someone about the goal that you've written down. That's one of the most surefire, reliable ways to accomplish more in your life. So, we hope that as we finish up this video that you have been able to get a better understanding of defining what is the nature of goals and how do they impact planning. And I hope that this has been useful for you not only to understand from a managerial perspective, but from a personal productivity perspective as well. the real benefit, the solid benefit of taking goals seriously, writing them down, considering what is the gap that exists between where we want to be and where we currently are, and what needs to change in order to accomplish these goals, both from a business perspective, an organizational perspective, as well as you and your team. I hope that's helpful. We'll see you in the next lecture.